The night began like any other for the single dad. He came home tired, shoulders heavy, mind busy with bills, work schedules, and the quiet worries that never left him. His small apartment felt silent except for the ticking wall clock and the soft breathing of his young son asleep in the next room. He reheated leftover food, ate without much thought, and stood by the window for a moment. Watching rain fall in thin silver lines under the street dot life had not been kind to him, but he had learned to keep moving. Since losing his wife years ago, he had learned to survive on routine. Wake up early, work long hours, come home, take care of his son, sleep, repeat. There was no room for surprises anymore. Or so he believed. That night, just as he was about to turn off the lights, he heard a sound. At first, it blended with the rain, soft, broken, almost easy to ignore. But something about it made him pause. It sounded like crying. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady and tired. The kind of crying that comes from giving up hope. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside, telling himself he would only take a quick look. The cold air hit his face, mixed with the smell of wet concrete. The sound grew clearer as he walked toward the old bus stop behind the building. It had been closed for months, its bench cracked, its roof leaking. Under that broken shelter sat two small figures. They were little girls, no more than 6 years old, identical, same thin arms wrapped around their knees, same wet hair stuck to their faces, same fear in their eyes. A small bag sat between them, soaked through. Their shoes were muddy and too big for their feet. The man froze. For a moment, his tired mind refused to accept what he was seeing. Kids did not just sit alone in the rain at night. Someone had to be nearby. A parent, a guardian, anyone. "Hey," he said gently, keeping his distance so he wouldn't scare them. "Where's your family?" The girls looked at each other, then back at him. One of them spoke, her voice small and shaky. She said to wait here. "Who?" he asked. "Our stepmom," the other girl replied. "She said she'd come back. How long have you been waiting?" he asked, already feeling something heavy forming in his chest. The girls shrugged. They didn't know time. They only knew the rain started after she left. They had been told not to move, to be good, to wait. He looked around. The street was empty. No cars, no footsteps, no sign of anyone returning. 1,000 thoughts rushed through his head. This was not his problem. He was already struggling. He had a child of his own. He barely managed rent. Getting involved could mean trouble, questions, responsibility. But when the wind picked up and the girls shivered, something inside him broke through the fear. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let's get you warm." They hesitated, gripping the bag tighter. "I won't hurt you," he added. "I live right there." After a long pause, they stood. Their legs looked stiff from sitting too long. He walked slowly so they could follow. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the night itself was watching. Inside the apartment, the warmth hit them right away. The girls relaxed just a little, their shoulders dropping. He found towels and wrapped them carefully. He warmed soup on the stove, the simple smell filling the room. They ate slowly, like they were unsure if more would come later. He noticed how they shared without speaking. One would take a sip, then pass the bowl, like they had learned early to look out for each other. When he asked again about their stepmom, they only repeated the same words. She said wait. She said be good. She said she'd come back. His heart sank. He gave them dry clothes from a neighbor who had kids, clothes that were too big but warm enough. His son woke up and stood quietly in the doorway, eyes wide. The man pulled him close and whispered that everything was okay, even though he wasn't sure it was. That night, the girls slept on the couch, curled together, holding hands, afraid that if they let go, one of them might disappear. The man sat in a chair nearby, unable to sleep. His mind raced with questions. What if someone accused him of something? What if authorities took his son away too? What if he couldn't protect these girls? But another thought kept returning, louder than the rest. What kind of person leaves children like this? Morning came slowly. Gray light filled the room. The rain had stopped, but the world felt just as heavy. The girls woke up quietly and sat up, as if trained not to disturb anyone. They smiled when they saw him, a small, hopeful smile that hurt his chest more than crying would have. He made breakfast. Simple toast and eggs. The girls ate like it was something special. That day, he tried to find answers. He made calls, asked questions. The truth came out piece by piece. Their father had passed away months earlier. The stepmom had struggled, then disappeared. No address. No contact. No plan to return. The girls were alone. By evening, reality settled in. This was not a one-night situation. This was something much bigger. Something life-changing. The man watched the twins play quietly on the floor with his son, using old toys, making up simple games. For the first time in years, laughter filled the apartment. Not loud laughter. Soft, careful laughter. But real. He felt fear, deep and sharp. He felt unprepared. He felt tired beyond words. But he also felt something else. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. He did not know it yet, but the choice he made that night under the rain would shape his life in ways he could never imagine. At that moment, he only knew one thing. He could not send them back into the dark. And so, without realizing it, he took the first step toward a miracle that would slowly grow in the quiet moments of everyday life. The next few days felt longer than usual. Time moved in a strange way, slow in the mornings and heavy at night. The single dad kept telling himself it was temporary, just until things were sorted out, just until someone official decided what to do. Still, every morning when he woke up and saw the two small shapes sleeping on the couch, reality hit him again. He adjusted his routine the best he could. He woke up earlier to prepare food for 3 children instead of 1. He packed lunches using what little he had, cutting sandwiches into smaller pieces so everyone could have some. He walked them all to school, even though it meant being late for work and getting warnings from his boss. He said nothing in return, only nodded and worked harder. The girls stayed close to him at all times. When he moved, they followed. When he spoke, they listened carefully, as if afraid one word might send them away. They never asked for toys or treats. They only asked one question again and again. When is she coming back? At first, he didn't know how to answer. He would say, soon, or I don't know yet. Each time, their faces fell just a little. Not enough to cry. Just enough to show quiet disappointment. One afternoon, someone from Child Services visited the apartment. The man cleaned the place as best he could, though it was already small and crowded. The visitor spoke kindly, but asked many questions. Where did the girls sleep? Did he know their family? Could he afford to care for them? He answered honestly. He had no special plan. No savings. No extra space. Only a couch, a spare blanket, and a heart that couldn't let them go. The visitor explained the process. Temporary care. Foster homes. Paperwork. Possibilities that involved separation. The girls listened from the doorway, holding each other's hands tightly. When they heard the words separate, one of them began to cry. That sound cut through him deeper than anything before. That night, after the children fell asleep, he sat alone at the kitchen table. Papers spread out in front of him. rules and conditions written in words that felt cold and distant. He wondered if he was being foolish. He had struggled for years just to give his son a stable life. Taking on more responsibility could break everything, but when he looked at the couch and saw the twins sleeping back to back, their fingers linked even in sleep, he knew there was no easy choice. Money became a problem quickly. Groceries ran out faster. Utility bills climbed. He skipped meals so the children wouldn't notice. He told himself hunger was nothing new. He had survived worse. His son had questions too. Why were the girls staying so long? Would they leave? Would he have to share his room forever? The man sat him down one evening and spoke gently. He explained that sometimes life brings people together in ways we don't plan. That kindness matters, even when it's hard. The boy listened quietly, then nodded. The next day, he offered one of his favorite toys to the twins. Without being asked, small moments like that kept the man going. The girls began to relax slowly. They laughed more. They spoke louder. They stopped flinching at sudden noises. They helped with simple chores, proud to be useful. One of them liked to sweep the floor. The other liked to line up shoes by the door. They thanked him for everything, even water, even a blanket. One night, one of the twins woke up crying from a bad dream. She called out for her stepmom at first, then went quiet. The man sat beside her, unsure what to do. He placed a hand on her back and stayed until her breathing slowed. She didn't pull away. The next morning, she called him uncle without thinking. Her sister followed. He didn't correct them. As days turned into weeks, the truth became clearer. No one was coming back for the girls. The stepmom had left the city. No contact information. No plans. Just absence. The man felt anger rise inside him, sharp and sudden. How could someone walk away from children like this? How could anyone sleep at night, knowing what they left behind? But anger didn't help. Only action did. He began attending school meetings for all 3 children, sitting on tiny chairs, listening carefully, learning which twins struggled with reading and which one loved drawing, learning which foods they avoided and which songs made them smile. He was exhausted. His body ached. His mind felt full all the time. But every evening, when the apartment filled with small voices and soft laughter, he felt something close to peace. One afternoon, child services returned. They spoke about foster care again, about better resources, about trained families, about what was best. The girls stood behind him, gripping his shirt. He took a deep breath and said the words that had been growing inside him for days. I don't want them separated. The visitor looked at him carefully, asked if he understood what that meant. The cost, the time, the responsibility. He nodded. He understood enough. That night, after the children were asleep, he lay awake thinking about the future. Nothing was certain. Nothing was easy. But one thing was clear. What started as a single act of help was becoming something much bigger, something real. And even though fear still lived in his chest, it no longer stood alone. Hope had moved in beside it. The days passed slowly, each one a mix of small victories and quiet struggles. Life in the small apartment had grown crowded, but the single dad tried to keep it steady. He woke early to prepare breakfast for all 3 children. He made simple meals: toast, eggs, oatmeal, but he tried to make them feel special, arranging plates carefully or cutting toast into fun shapes. The girls watched with wide eyes, learning quickly, and his son often offered to help, even if it meant spilling flour or dropping eggs. School became a new challenge. The twins were shy at first, reluctant to speak to teachers or classmates. They clung to him at drop-off, gripping his hands tightly. He knelt down, speaking gently, reminding them they were safe and that he would always be there. It took time, but slowly they started to smile. One of them raised her hand in class for the first time. Another came home with a small drawing, shyly offering it to him. He hung it on the fridge with pride. Even though it was just a scribble dot at home, he struggled with space. 3 children sharing a small apartment meant toys scattered everywhere, clothes piling up, and constant noise. His son sometimes felt jealous of the attention the twins required. One evening, he caught his son looking sad as the girls played together. He pulled him aside and explained that love doesn't have limits, that the more hearts we care for, the bigger our hearts grow. The boy nodded and later offered the twins his blanket when they were cold. A small gesture of kindness that made the father's chest tighten. Money was always tight. Every week brought new worries. Bills, groceries, school supplies all stretched his budget to the limit. He skipped small things for himself, cutting back on lunches, coffee, even heating sometimes, to make sure the children had what they needed. Still, he never let them see the stress. He smiled when they asked, reassured them when they worried, and kept every promise he made, no matter how small. The twins began to show their personalities in subtle ways. One loved to hum softly while drawing. The other loved arranging their shoes neatly by the door or helping sweep the floor. They laughed quietly at inside jokes he didn't fully understand, and they learned to trust the apartment as a safe place. He watched them and realized that even in their tiny gestures, they were teaching him patience, care, and the quiet joy of small routines. Some days were harder than others. When one of the girls fell sick, he stayed up all night caring for her, running between the kitchen and bathroom, trying to make her comfortable. When his son struggled with homework, he stayed late, patient, explaining the same lesson over and over. Every moment demanded energy he often didn't have, yet he found strength he didn't know existed. The apartment was noisy, chaotic, and exhausting, but it was alive in a way it had never been before. He began to see changes in himself too. Where he had once focused solely on survival, he now thought about long-term care. He researched guardianship options, legal requirements, and child services procedures. He made calls, sent emails, and attended meetings, often taking time off work to show he was serious. It was tiring, stressful, but necessary. He refused to give up, even when paperwork felt endless and forms confusing despite all the challenges. There were moments of unexpected happiness. One evening, the children asked him to play a game with them. They laughed until their cheeks hurt, and even his son joined in with a shy smile. Later, they sat around the small table drawing together, showing him their artwork. He realized that these small moments of joy were the true treasure, far beyond money, comfort, or recognition. The twins had brought warmth into a life that had been filled with routine and quiet. Sorrow. Sometimes he worried about the future. What would happen if authorities decided foster care was better? What if he couldn't provide everything they needed? The fear of losing them haunted him, but he refused to dwell too long on what-ifs. Instead, he focused on what he could do: cook for them, comfort them, teach them, protect them. Every small act mattered. Every kind word, every hug, every shared laugh built the foundation for something stronger than fear. At night, when the apartment grew quiet, he often sat and reflected. He thought about the rainy night that brought them into his life. He thought about how fragile and unexpected life could be. He thought about the love that had grown quietly, steadily, in the midst of chaos. He felt grateful, exhausted, overwhelmed, but alive in a way he had not been for years. One afternoon, the girls brought home small gifts from school, handmade bracelets and drawings. They handed them to him shyly, saying, "For you, Uncle." He felt a lump in his throat. These small gestures carried more meaning than words could express. He hugged them tightly, careful not to crush them, and whispered that he would treasure them forever. It was not the kind of wealth measured in money. It was something far richer: love, trust, and belonging. Slowly, the neighborhood began to notice the changes too. Neighbors commented on how happy the children seemed. Some offered small help: a bag of groceries, a toy, a word of encouragement. He accepted with quiet gratitude, still cautious, still aware of how easily things could fall apart. But he knew that even small acts of kindness made a difference. Every evening ended the same way: the children in bed, tucked under blankets. The apartment quiet, except for soft breathing and the occasional creak of the floor. He sat nearby, exhausted, thinking about the day, the meals, the school runs, the laughter, and the tears. He thought about how far they had all come, how the girls had grown more confident, how his son had grown more caring, how he himself had discovered a strength he had not known. And then he realized something simple, yet profound. Life was no longer just about surviving. It was about being present, about caring for others, about the small, everyday miracles that grew from love, attention, and patience. The twins had entered his life unexpectedly, but they were now part of its rhythm, inseparable from the quiet joy, chaos, and meaning that filled each day. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. There were still challenges ahead: legal hurdles, financial struggles, and emotional tests. But he had learned something crucial. Love could stretch farther than fear. Kindness could grow even in exhaustion. And miracles could appear quietly, in the shape of two small girls who had been left behind, now teaching him how to live fully again. The weeks turned into months, and life began to settle into a rhythm that felt both exhausting and comforting. The small apartment, once quiet and lonely, was now filled with the sounds of three children playing, laughing, and occasionally arguing over toys or seating at the small kitchen table. The single dad had grown used to the constant activity, though he often found himself leaning against the wall, exhausted, rubbing his eyes, and wondering if he was doing enough. School routines became part of every morning. He woke early, dressed the children, packed lunches, and walked them to the bus stop. The twins, once shy and fearful, now held his hand confidently, chatting quietly as they walked. His son walked beside them, proud to show them the safest routes and small shortcuts he had learned. The man smiled quietly to himself, noticing how the children were slowly growing, learning, and adapting. Each day brought small victories: a good grade, a compliment from a teacher, or the girls sharing their art with pride. These moments reminded him why every sacrifice mattered. But life wasn't easy. Money was still tight, and work demanded long hours. He often skipped meals, worked late, and worried about bills while trying to provide comfort and stability for the children. He kept careful track of every penny, cut unnecessary expenses, and asked for help quietly when it was needed. Friends and neighbors sometimes offered assistance: an extra loaf of bread, a small toy, or a bag of clothes, but he always felt a mix of gratitude and quiet shame, knowing he was asking so much from life, but giving everything he had in return. Then came the news he had been preparing for, quietly dreading and finally facing. Child Services wanted to place the twins in foster care. The paperwork had arrived weeks earlier, and meetings had been scheduled. The man knew that legal processes often prioritized procedures over human connection. He understood the reasoning. The girls needed stability, verified care, and trained guardians, but his heart refused to accept separation. He watched the twins play in the living room, their laughter soft but full of life, and felt a pain he had never known. The thought of someone else raising them, even temporarily, was unbearable. He made a decision that changed everything. He would fight for them. He would take on every challenge, face every fear, and navigate the difficult and exhausting process of guardianship. It would mean long nights reading legal documents, hours spent at offices, and endless phone calls. It would mean putting his body, mind, and finances to the test. But he knew it was worth it. The thought of the girls leaving, of losing the small family they had begun to form, was impossible to bear. The first step was gathering proof. School records, medical reports, photographs, testimonies from neighbors, and statements from his son. He organized everything carefully, often late at night, after the children were asleep. He wanted to show that he could provide a safe, loving environment. He wanted to prove that love mattered just as much as rules, that his home, though small, was full of care and attention. The twins slept nearby, and sometimes he would peek at them, their faces soft in sleep, hands tucked under their cheeks. That sight gave him strength. Meetings with social workers were long and intimidating. Questions were sharp, sometimes cold, about finances, routines, and potential risks. He answered honestly, never exaggerating, never hiding shortcomings. He explained how he managed his time, how he cared for all 3 children, how they were thriving emotionally despite their difficult past. He emphasized their bonds, their happiness, and their growing trust. Each meeting tested him, but each also strengthened his resolve. He could not, would not, give up. The twins, unaware of the full gravity of the situation, sensed tension. They clung to him more during mornings and held his hand tighter at night. One evening, as he tucked them into bed, one whispered, "Will we have to leave?" He paused, searching for words that would reassure without false promises. "I am going to try my best," he said quietly, "and I will fight for you." Their eyes widened slightly, hope mingled with fear. They whispered, "Okay, Uncle," and slowly drifted to sleep, trusting his words more than their own understanding of the world. During this period, his son became a quiet support, understanding the seriousness even without full comprehension. He helped with chores, comforted the girls when they were scared, and offered small gestures of kindness, like saving his favorite snack for them or reading stories. The father noticed, quietly proud, realizing that the process was shaping all 3 children, teaching them empathy, patience, and resilience. The family bond strengthened, though it came with tension, sleepless nights, and moments of doubt. Outside the apartment, life carried on. The community began noticing the children's growth, their laughter, and their manners. Neighbors who had initially offered small assistance now encouraged him openly, spoke in support during meetings, and sometimes offered temporary relief watching the children for a few hours or lending supplies. He accepted quietly, grateful for the help, but determined not to rely too heavily on anyone. This fight, he knew, was his responsibility, and he would face it fully. Legal hearings were the most challenging. Sitting in a small office, he faced professionals who assessed everything: income, living space, daily routines, emotional stability. He answered every question with honesty, sharing stories about the girls' growth, their habits, and their happiness. He explained the routines he had built, how he ensured safety, education, and care. He admitted his fears, his limits, but also emphasized his dedication and love. The room was serious, sometimes tense, but he remained calm, steady, and unwavering. He could not show doubt, not when so much depended on him. Days turned into weeks as documents were reviewed, background checks completed, and home visits arranged. Each step carried uncertainty, yet he focused on the present, feeding the children, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories, listening to their small complaints, and celebrating tiny achievements. Life remained chaotic, sometimes overwhelming, but each small success reinforced his belief that this family deserved to stay together. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the decision came. He was granted temporary guardianship. The relief was immediate but quiet. He did not shout or celebrate loudly. Instead, he sat in his small living room, watching the twins play, feeling the weight lift from his chest. He hugged them close, feeling the soft rhythm of their breathing against his shoulder. His son joined in, and for the first time in months, the three children, and he felt a sense of security, even if temporary. The fight was not over, but a major step had been won. In the following weeks, life slowly began to stabilize. The twins settled into routines more confidently, their laughter louder, their voices freer. School became easier, and homework sessions became moments of shared patience and learning. Meals were shared without stress, bedtime routines became smoother, and the apartment, though still small and crowded, felt fuller with love and warmth. The father noticed small moments that reminded him why he had fought so hard: a spontaneous hug, a shy smile, a whispered thank you at the table. He reflected on the journey quietly at night. From the first rainy night when he had found the girls alone, to the long days of paperwork, school meetings, and legal battles, the path had been exhausting and frightening. Yet it had also been filled with unexpected joy, growth, and connection. The twins had become more than children he cared for. They were part of the rhythm of his life, inseparable from the small joys and small struggles that defined his days. He realized that love, even in its quietest forms, could shape everything. That small acts of care, patience, and presence mattered more than perfection. That miracles were not always loud or dramatic. They often came in quiet, daily victories, in the laughter of children, and in the courage to keep fighting for what was right. And in that understanding, he found peace, exhaustion, hope, and purpose all at once. Years passed quietly, but the little apartment never felt empty again. The small living room, once filled with the echo of uncertainty, now carried laughter, chatter, and the steady rhythm of three children growing up together. The twins, who had once been shy and scared, had learned to trust, to play freely, and to express themselves. Their smiles were brighter, their steps more confident, and their small hands reached for the world without fear. The single dad watched all of it with quiet pride, sometimes marveling at how much love and resilience could fit into such a small space. Every day brought new routines, new challenges, and new joys. Schoolwork became more structured, yet more enjoyable. The twins began excelling in subjects they had once struggled with, encouraged not by pressure, but by gentle guidance, patience, and endless support. They joined clubs, made friends, and even performed in small school events, sometimes holding his hand before stepping on stage, sometimes waving proudly when he clapped from the audience. The father never missed a single performance. Each applause, each smile, each small achievement felt like a victory, not just for the children, but for the quiet bond that had formed between them. The son, once wary of sharing attention, had grown into a caring and responsible older sibling. He helped with homework, played games patiently, and often comforted the twins when they were scared or frustrated. Watching them all together, the father realized that this family had grown not just in number, but in heart. They cared for each other deeply, understood each other's moods, and found joy in simple shared moments. The apartment, though still small and busy, was filled with warmth that no luxury could replace. Life outside the apartment continued, with its challenges and unpredictability. Work remained demanding, bills still arrived with regularity, and occasional emergencies tested his patience and resolve. Yet he approached each challenge with a calm determination, fueled by the knowledge that the children were his responsibility, his joy, and his miracle. He learned to balance exhaustion with focus, stress with hope, and scarcity with creativity. Even small victories, a repair done without extra cost, a free activity at school, a shared laughter during dinner felt monumental. One evening, as the children finished homework and helped set the table, the father paused and watched them. The twins giggled over a small disagreement about who got the last piece of bread, while his son rolled his eyes with mock frustration. The father smiled quietly, a deep warmth filling his chest. He realized that these small, ordinary moments were the real treasures. The chaos, the noise, the laughter, the small arguments, they all mattered because they meant life was full, alive, and shared. Occasionally, memories of that first rainy night returned. He thought about the fear in the twins' eyes, the trembling hands, and the soft whispers of hope. He remembered the uncertainty, the sleepless nights, and the constant worry about making the right choices. Yet each time he also remembered the first smile, the first laugh, the first word they called him uncle. Those memories reminded him that every hard moment had led to this family, love, and a life richer than he could have imagined. The girls began to take on small responsibilities, each in her own way. One loved helping prepare simple meals, arranging plates carefully, and learning to cook under his watchful guidance. The other enjoyed tidying the apartment, organizing shoes, and sweeping the floor, taking pride in contributing to the household. These small acts of independence gave them confidence and showed the father that even tiny gestures of responsibility could nurture growth, resilience, and trust. Each success became a building block, forming the foundation of strong, capable children. He also took time to nurture their emotional growth. Conversations about feelings became part of daily life. When the twins were frustrated, he encouraged them to express their emotions rather than hide them. When they were proud of small achievements, he celebrated quietly but meaningfully. Through these interactions, they learned empathy, patience, and understanding. The son absorbed these lessons too, becoming a compassionate, attentive sibling. In turn, the father realized that guiding children was not just about teaching rules or routines. It was about modeling love, patience, and emotional intelligence. The community around them noticed the transformation as well. Neighbors spoke about the lively apartment, the polite children, and the father who seemed to carry an endless well of patience. Occasional offers of help continued: groceries, toys, school supplies, but these were less needed now. The father had grown confident in his ability to manage challenges, finding creative solutions to problems and focusing on what truly mattered, the well-being and happiness of the children under his care. As time passed, he began to think more about the long term. Guardianship had been temporary, but he worked steadily toward legal permanence. Meetings with officials, paperwork, and careful planning continued, though now they were approached with confidence rather than fear. The twins and his son understood more about what was happening, yet he shielded them from worry, emphasizing that their home was safe and that their family would remain together. The trust they had built carried them through every uncertainty, making the process smoother for everyone. Life had taught him patience, resilience, and the value of quiet dedication. He had learned to embrace uncertainty while nurturing stability. He had learned that miracles often arrive in forms that are quiet, ordinary, and unexpected. The twins had been abandoned, frightened, and unsure of the world. But through small daily acts of care, protection, and love, he had helped them grow into joyful, confident children. In return, they had changed him too, teaching him that life's greatest rewards are not measured in money or comfort, but in love, trust, and shared moments. On a particularly calm evening, as the children played quietly in the living room, and the father washed dishes in the kitchen, he paused to reflect. The journey from that rainy night to this moment had been long and challenging, filled with fear, exhaustion, and uncertainty. Yet it had also been filled with growth, laughter, and love. The children had become more than wards of his care. They had become the heartbeat of his life. His everyday miracle. The twins, sensing his gaze, looked up and smiled. The father returned their smiles, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude and fulfillment. His son, noticing the quiet moment, reached out and held his hand, a silent reminder of the bond they shared. The apartment, filled with warmth and laughter, was a testament to endurance, love, and the quiet power of human connection. It was not perfect. There were still challenges ahead, unexpected problems, and moments of stress. But there was also joy, resilience, and a shared life that could not be measured or replaced in the following years. Routines continued, but the children grew more independent. They learned, explored, and discovered themselves, guided by the quiet wisdom of their father. They faced small disappointments and occasional failures, but always within the safety of a home filled with care. Birthdays, school events, and everyday activities became opportunities for shared memories, laughter, and growth. Each small success was celebrated, not with grand gestures, but with presence, attention, and genuine pride. The father often thought about the future. He knew challenges would continue: school transitions, teenage worries, financial pressures, but he no longer feared them as he once had. He trusted the foundation they had built together: love, patience, and unshakable bonds. He had learned that while life could be unpredictable, commitment and care could create stability, security, and joy. The twins had taught him that even small children could transform a home, a heart, and a life, bringing unexpected happiness that changed everything. One evening, as the children prepared for bed, the father tucked them in, kissed their foreheads, and whispered that he was proud of them. The twins smiled sleepily and held his hand for a moment longer than usual. His son, now older, leaned against him and whispered thanks for everything he had done. In that quiet moment, the father understood fully what he had gained. It was more than children. It was a family, a life intertwined with love, patience, and resilience. It was the realization that the girls had become his everyday miracle, not through extraordinary events, but through ordinary days filled with care, attention, and unwavering commitment. Life, he realized, would continue to bring challenges, joys, and quiet victories. But the bonds formed in that small apartment, forged through hardship, patience, and love, would endure. The twins, once abandoned and fearful, were now thriving, bringing light, laughter, and purpose into his life every single day. He had saved them, yes, but they had also saved him, showing him the true meaning of family, love, and everyday miracles.